In this video, we're showing you how we're using the Fellow Aiden coffee brewer to brew April coffee. Hi and welcome. My name is Patrick Rolf and this is Coffee with April. So for this video, we're gonna take a look at this, the Fellow Aiden coffee brewer. Obviously, this is a brewer that has been around for quite some time now at the market. We've seen some great reviews. I believe a lot of people actually have this at home, so we'd be super curious to see what you guys are actually doing with it and what is the results that you have been getting. The reason why we're doing a video now, kind of late in the game, is that we are actually using this brewer in our kind of newly opened SP coffee shop concept that we opened here in Copenhagen earlier this year. So we've been trying this quite extensively because we're using two of these in our shop to actually brew our batch brew there. And it's been kind of an interesting journey, and I think now we're at a point where we have figured out the way that we want to use this brewer. And as always on this channel, we're sharing how do you get the best results using the equipment when brewing coffees from April. So that's kind of what we're doing here today. So this is not going to be the most technical video. There are some great examples of that, especially James Hoffman's video, which I just watched myself now as well. Incredible work as always. But what we're going to do is we're just going to have a look at, okay, but how do we take all the information out there and how do we implement that into the style of brewing that we do here at April, right? So first of all, as you probably know, me and batch brews is not really a thing in general, right? If I go to a coffee shop, I wouldn't necessarily order one. And I think the general idea of batch brews in terms of brewing, let's say 2 liters or even more, doesn't really add up and it doesn't give you the best quality of coffee. Let's face it, batch brews is convenient. So also for this video, if you want to have the best version of an April coffee, buy an April brewer or do a pour over at home, right? This is really for convenient, a little bit of a faster service, not faster brew, I should say, and we'll come back to that later. So in general, you have to look at it, okay, what are you actually looking for here in terms of taste, right? Now, walking through the brewer a little bit, obviously Fellow gets a lot of credit for the aesthetic aspect of what they do. This is a really pretty brewer, I would say. It looks a little bit futuristic as some of the things that they do. Personally, I would vibe a little bit more with, let's say, Wolfire, maybe Mocha Master for something that I actually would put in my home. This looks more like an office setup to me, I would say. Anyhow, it integrates pretty well within our coffee shop. So in the SP coffee shop, it's actually quite nice. So, you know, kudos to them. In general, there's a few interesting features here. And again, we're not going to go into too much details on the back end because the back end is pretty big and it gets a bit messy. And it's all kind of accessed on the screen here to this bottom here, right? And one of the cool things with this is that if you are a nerd, if you want to try a bunch of different things, different pulses, different temperatures in those pulses, different blooming, a lot of things, you actually can. So you can test so many different recipes here, which are all kind of fairly accurate, right? So you make a temperature change and it kind of works. We're actually working with temperature changes within our recipe as well. So in general, it's very interesting and it's quite easy to kind of lose yourself in the whole kind of back end of it, which we've done for the last 6 months. Anyhow, there's a few kind of interesting conclusions that we have, which I think in a way resonates our style of brewing in general. And first of all, and perhaps the most important thing I would say with batch brews, and specifically this one, is grind coarse. Grinding coarse will always give you a higher quality coffee. You get better extraction, you get a more uniform extraction as well. So always go in and grind coarse. Now, grinding coarse, if you then want an appropriate target strength, in our world, the hack is very simple, you brew big. So larger brews that enables a much coarser grind size, actually in this case, to me, tastes a lot better than a smaller brew that requires a finer grind size, right? And this kind of brewer, at least initially, has been pitched as like a 1-cup brewer and a batch brewer, right? I am not a fan of the 1-cup kind of small model of this brewer. It comes with 2 different baskets as well. We have the kind of more V60 cone looking one, classic kind of Melita style. and we have the kind of flatbed one, right? And it goes without saying that I'm going to go for the large flatbed to get the highest quality extraction here, right? So that's also what we've done. When we say grind coarse, we're looking at about 680 microns, roughly, plus minus 10 up and down, a little bit depending on the coffee as well. But in general, that's been the hack that kind of actually really turned me around when it comes to the idea of these batch brews, because it tastes pretty good. Now, there are a few things to consider as always when you do any kind of batch brew. Is one is freshness, right? So these brews taste really good when they are fresh. Do not taste so good 20 minutes, 30 minutes after they're brewed, right? So basically you brew and you serve, which is why in our shop, in the SP Coffee Shop, we're using this. It's a much smaller format. We're not brewing the max capacity either. And the reason for that is because we always want that filter coffee to be fresh, 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 fresh. Because the second a batch brew is sitting, especially in a larger thermos and just oxidizes, not going to be a very tasty coffee. You have a few like really important kind of challenges with this. Secondly, which I think is also quite interesting, the format of the server or the pitcher is relatively small in relationship to, let's say, a normal thermos for a batch brewer. And the biggest challenge you have with these kind of 2 liters thermoses is the fact that the coffee is just going to start separating, and the strength you're getting is not going to be uniform if you let that sit for 20 plus minutes, 30 minutes, and so on, right? Here, which is very important, and you should do that with all of your batch brews. We do the same thing in our April store when we serve our pour overs with the April brewer. We serve it with a little bit of spoon, and we ask them to actually stir the cup, because even in a smaller kind of a pour over setting, the strength of the coffee is going to be layered, right? So it's not going to be uniform throughout the full cup. And that's especially true here because Fellow has not designed a way to distribute and mix the liquid properly. So traditionally in, let's say, a home brewer like this, you would have some kind of funnel coming down here that actually allows to mix or like distribute the coffee a little bit more uniform. Here you don't. So it's absolutely important that you take some kind of spoon and do a proper kind of stir. Otherwise, you are never going to be able to make sure that it's uniform throughout, right? So if we would serve coffee from this server in the shop, we would basically mix every single time. So that's something that I would recommend you to do as well if you're using it. So what you don't want to do is to do one single brew and just kind of pour directly. Then you know for sure that it's not going to be uniform. Another kind of observation with this brewer as well in general is that it actually comes out really, really hot. A bit depending on your brewing temperature, of course. But in general, we find that it's actually coming out in pretty high temperatures. Obviously, if you want to change that and have a coffee that is more drinkable, let's say directly, then just lower the temperature of that final pour. Now, we're going to obviously taste this, but then walk through a little bit more in detail what this recipe actually includes. So the coffee that we used, which is important to know for the recipe itself, even though we use a relatively, let's say, similar recipe when we're brewing, is a wash process pacamara from a farm in Guatemala, just outside of Guatemala City, Jalapa, called El Morito. Again, wash process pacamara, a bit stone fruity, very balanced, very clean. Being an April coffee, it's a lighter roasted coffee as well, right? Which you should take into consideration when you listen to this kind of recipe, right? Now, in general, what we do is that we do a 1:18 brewing ratio-ish, right? And this is something that we recommend for all kind of batch brews. Always use more water. It's going to taste better. Use more water, grind coarser. That's important just in general. And here we're dosing about 58.3 grams to 1,050 grams of water, 1,040 grams of water. So roughly a 1:18 ratio, right? And this is something that you can very easily go in and regulate on the display. So in terms of the ratios you're using and the ratios of your pour, the kind of form language is very simple, and you can kind of navigate yourself to make sure that you get that best result, right? Now, we're dividing basically into 3 separate pours, more or less. We're going to start with a bloom. The bloom sits at 116 grams of water, roughly at 96 degrees Celsius, so a little bit higher. We let that sit, and then we're going to phase 2, which is basically 2 pours. First pour is 464-ish at 93 degrees Celsius. The second pour is 464 grams of water again at 88 degrees Celsius, right? So we trap down that temperature a little bit. Basically, we make sure we extract as much as we can initially. And then, because you're looking at very long contact times, like this is a 10-minute brew, almost 11 if you look at the total kind of drip through, right? So when you're having such a long contact time between coffee and water, you have to grind coarse, you have to use a lot of water, and you have to work with some kind of lowering of temperature, especially because this is fairly stable when it comes to the temperature it delivers. So if you ask for 96, it's going to give you 96 every single time. But if you use like a pour over kettle, for example, right, that temperature is going to change from your first pour to your final pour, even though it's not going to change much. So you're going to always have a bit of a decrease in temperature when you're brewing. And you kind of want to mimic that when it comes to a batch brew concept as well, right? But in general, what's kind of interesting here is that we're getting actually very good results, and we're getting very consistent results, right? Like this is a few small things you should think about. One, you use the flatbed basket, put that coffee in, shake that out properly. Obviously make sure that the water is proper. We used RO water at a ppm of around 40 to 50, a little bit depending on the day. But we want to make sure to have it as clean as possible, right? And that goes for your home brewing as well, because it doesn't really matter what you're using unless you have good water, right? Now, one of the things to consider here is that we're actually running this on, at the moment, Ditton grinders or EK grinders, which you may not have standing at home, right? Most likely with this, you might have the Fellow Aiden or something similar when it comes to grinders. And then we just basically recommend to find that 680 micron on those grinders, which should be fairly simple pretty much, basically in the higher part of the dial. And with that in mind, we're looking for a target TDS of around 1.25 to 1.22. So again, a little bit lower, but it's because a batch brew or a larger brew of filter coffee has this kind of strength to it in terms of taste, just because it's a larger mass of coffee that you're brewing, right? So that's kind of interesting, and that's a little bit the details of it, right? Like obviously work-wise, there's been some interesting things. We had some issues with the handles actually kind of falling apart on us, so we actually had to buy a few new ones. This display is a little bit difficult to go through if you really want to go into that back end, which is a bit of a shame because the back end is really interesting. It really enables you to kind of manipulate the brew in quite interesting ways. So we actually really like the functions of it. It's just a little bit hard to access and work with. In general, cleanliness footprint is quite good. So in that way, it actually kind of works out. I still think design-wise, it maybe belongs better in an office than in someone's home, but that's just a personal preference, right? Most importantly, it brews a tasty cup of coffee, right? And that's what we're all about here at April. So I think in the world of kind of, let's say, call it a small batch brew or home batch brewer, it kind of does the job pretty well. I still think a normal kind of pour over will beat this every day of the week. But I do understand that some people think that that's a little bit too much effort, so this might be easier. They do have a fancy app you can use as well. I'm not necessarily a fan of using apps, so I haven't really used it myself. But I looked through the interface and it seems to be working really smoothly, and you can make a lot of interesting decisions and choices very easily, a bit more easy than on the display here actually, right? So in general, it's kind of a good brewer. Like we're happy with it, and it makes a lot of sense, I think, for us to use it in the SP Coffee Shop. And as we kind of grow the volume of coffee we serve, we have 2 now, we're soon gonna have 3 or 4. Again, because we want to do fresh coffee more often, that makes a lot more sense. So I'd much rather have a smaller system like this and more of them than having a larger system that doesn't generate as good of a coffee, right? So that's about it for this video here. We gave you a few kind of cues on how we use this, which I think is the most important thing. We're using the flatbed filter, we're grinding coarse, we're using a higher ratio, at least 1:18. We're separating the pours into 3 different steps, and we're changing the temperature from a bit higher to lower throughout the brew pretty much to get the best results. We're definitely brewing a slightly lower strength because batch brew as a general idea gives you a little bit more body, a bit more texture to it in general, right? But overall, we're quite happy with it, and we think it works out pretty well. And now we're super interested to just hear a lot of your thoughts, your ideas. I know there's people out there that have been using this. I'm sure there's been some people that's been battling, let's say, pour over versus this, see what is tastiest. What are the challenges you found with it? What are the kind of positives you found with it? Is there a better home brewer out there somewhere? We are very interested in home brewing in general. When it, like these days, we're looking at both espresso machines, and that goes also with these kind of brewers, right? So hook us up, comment, share all of this. It's always really helpful and it's really interesting. We want to know what you guys are thinking about it, and hopefully our kind of recipe and usage of this can kind of inspire you to try it out as well. And then we want to hear what you think about it. So that was all for us for this time, and as always, just thank you for watching, and make sure you subscribe and comment all of this. It really helps, and we want to wish you a good day, and thank you for watching. We want to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we are able to continue to make these videos, and we want you all to feel free to always come with suggestions and ideas on the content that you want to see, because we are doing this for you and because of you. Thank you from all of us here at April.